Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse says the SEC's approach was the main reason his company and two others created the biggest industry super PAC called Fairshake.
People are like, why did these companies come together and organize and say, this matters? And it's a reaction to a war on crypto.
So if there had been a different SEC chair than Gary Gensler?
I'm not sure Fairshake would exist.
Really?
Absolutely.
In response, an SEC spokesperson said any amount spent by the crypto industry on legal defense or influence peddling pales in comparison to the savings lost by crypto investors to frauds and failures.
Imagine a single tweet from Trump and a quiet Fed decision under Biden that together sent Ripple's XRP whales scrambling, and no one's asking why. Last year, the Federal Reserve under ex-President Biden stunned markets by announcing it would skip cutting interest rates, setting off a cascade of reactions in stocks, crypto, and even global trade talks. At the same time, now President Trump teased a major trade deal with a highly respected country, fueling speculation from Wall Street to Main Street. And lurking beneath these seismic moves is Ripple's XRP, where savvy whales have quietly amassed nearly 1 billion tokens in the past month. What ties these three threads together, Biden, Trump, and Ripple, and what hidden agenda is driving the next wave in crypto? Today, we peel back the curtain on an intersection nobody's talking about.
Let's start off with the big news. We've got Biden announcing an executive order on crypto regulation. Lots of digital currencies rallied after that announcement. What's the temperature in the room on this? Are these forthcoming rules bringing welcome clarity, or could new guardrails actually be a bad thing for an industry that is still very much in its early days?
Oh, thanks for having me on, and that's a great question. The executive order is the signal that we're entering a new bull market phase in the crypto market. I think it's that important. The big question coming into the executive order was whether it was going to be balanced, whether it was going to talk about both the risks and the opportunities of crypto. Based on our initial read of what's in there, it does exactly that. The crypto market needs better and clearer regulation if it's going to go truly mainstream, if it's going to go from a $1.5 trillion industry to a $15 trillion industry. What we got here was sort of a shotgun start, telling all regulators to push that forward, do so in a way that protects investors, but that doesn't, throw the baby out with the bathwater, that keeps the economic development here in the US. I think it's pretty close to the outcome we were all hoping for, and that's why you're seeing markets rally today. And I suspect that rally will continue, for the rest of the year. I think it's a really important one.
So here's what happened. The Federal Reserve, led by appointees from the Biden administration, announced it would hold interest rates steady, postponing any cuts until at least the next meeting on June 17th. Overnight, stock futures dipped, bond yields swung, and within hours, Bitcoin spiked back above $80,000, prompting a fresh wave of optimism in crypto markets. But if you think that's just about interest rates, you're missing the bigger story. This Fed decision isn't merely a technical tweak. It reflects the administration's broader strategy to stabilize traditional assets before unleashing the next chapter in digital finance. And at the center of that chapter, Ripple. Think back to when Biden took office. He vowed tougher oversight of big banks and financial institutions, appointing Fed governors who insist on cautious liquidity measures. That caution is exactly why the Fed chose to skip rate cuts now, to guard against inflation risks. But it also throttles M2 money supply growth, keeping excess cash from flooding markets. Fewer bank loans, tighter credit, and a steady yield curve. To most observers, those look like standard macro controls. But shrewd players see this as a window to build positions in assets primed to surge once rates finally fall. Case in point, XRP whales.
Here is what President Trump just said moments ago. President Trump taking to Truth Social, saying, "Too late, Jerome Powell," that's what he's now nicknamed Jerome Powell, too late, "is a fool," he says, "who doesn't have a clue. Other than that, I like him very much. Oil and energy way down, almost all costs, groceries and eggs down, virtually no inflation, tariff money pouring into the U.S., the exact opposite of too late. Enjoy, exclamation point." So the Federal Reserve Chair being called a fool. fool who he likes.
What I don't understand is if the economy's great and
well, the
inflation's not a problem.
Whenever the Fed does something, whether they cut or don't cut, it's always like, what's the market? And it closed nicely yesterday, up 300, and it's up this morning.
If the economy's great, why does the Fed need to cut rates at this point?
Over the past 30 days, on what should have been sleepy consolidation, large holders have scooped up roughly 900 million XRP, valued at nearly $1.8 billion. That's not a coincidence. They're betting that when the Fed finally pivots in mid-June, liquidity will gush back into risk markets, stocks snapping new highs, Bitcoin breaking past six figures, and altcoins igniting into what we call alt season. This perfect storm could send XRP soaring well beyond its current range. And while everyone else watches Bitcoin dominance tick above 65%, these whales quietly stack their bags, knowing the next move won't be about Bitcoin. It'll be about the alts that outperform. But hold on. Balancing that playbook is none other than Donald Trump. Fresh from a Truth Social post, he's hyped a major trade deal announcement from the Oval Office, billed as the first of many with a highly respected country. The rumor mill immediately pointed to China, then Canada. And sure enough, just last week, Trump hosted Canada's former central banker, Mark Carney, at the White House. Together they hailed a new relationship based on respect and common interest. Within 24 hours, markets smelled a Canadian accord. Why does any of this matter for Ripple? Because cross-border payment deals, especially those involving Canada, one of the world's top banking hubs, could threaten SWIFT's grip and give RippleNet an opening.
XRP holders holding at least 500 million XRP or more, those have remained unchanged. 5 of those 28, with balances between 500 million XRP and 1 billion XRP. These addresses alone hold a whopping 14 billion XRP, representing 26% of XRP's current circulating supply.
Imagine a US-Canada payment corridor settled via XRP, or at least powered by Ripple's on-demand liquidity. Suddenly, cheap, fast transfers across the world's longest border become tangible. And when you layer that potential on top of a Fed rate cut that floods markets with capital, you get a launchpad for XRP that fewer investors have anticipated. It's no grand conspiracy, but an overlooked synergy. Biden's Fed holds tight until June. Trump clinches a trade pact that nudges global payments toward blockchain rails, and Ripple sits in the bullseye. Meanwhile, the altcoin market paints a familiar picture, even as Bitcoin regained momentum, tapping $98,000 resistance before settling in the high $80Ks. Most alts remain stuck in sideways rhythms, flirting with old lows and undercut by Bitcoin dominance. That $3 trillion crypto market cap feels static because money rotates into Bitcoin first, then trickles down. XRP, however, is bucking that trend. Its chart may look muted, but whales combine to turn a long, healthy consolidation into a stealth accumulation phase. And if you've paid attention, you know that consolidation after a 591% rally in just 74 days is a textbook setup for a secondary surge.
XRP has been relisted on a large Canadian exchange, and they did it very quietly under the radar. What do you think of this, Meg BZK?
XRP being relisted on BitBuy, one of my favorite platforms in Canada, is a really big deal. Now, they are a regulated Canadian platform. They follow all of these guidelines. They take this all very seriously. So I'm actually curious, like, what do you think that Canadian regulators told them about XRP that they are relisting it? That's a big deal.
The question. They felt the need, or felt like they could, put XRP back on the platform. So go sign up if you want to. We use that. We use BitBuy.
I like BitBuy.
Shout out BitBuy for being nice to the XRP community.
Of course, caution is key. High Bitcoin dominance means any slip in BTC price can hammer altcoins, sending XRP tumbling with everything else. That's why smart money sits in stablecoins at the moment, waiting for confirmation of two things: a daily close above 98.5K on Bitcoin, and a clear June 17th rate cut by the Fed. Nail those, and watch XRP break free from its current resistance band near 75 cents, exceed $1, and a retest of former highs becomes the baseline narrative. But here's where the hidden agenda crystallizes. Regulators under Biden let the SEC's case against Ripple drag on, creating uncertainty that capped XRP's upside. Now, whispers suggest a settlement pause is in the works, a subtle olive branch that nobody's broadcasting. Combine that with Trump's promise to erase harmful crypto rules, and you get a rare bipartisan alignment, if only at the margin, to silence institutional skeptics. Add in a Canada trade deal that prioritizes digital ledger systems, and you have the policy trifecta driving XRP toward a breakout.
Of course, Ripple XRP is the token of Ripple, and you can buy XRP, and there's a whole other side of it where people are speculating on XRP itself. But from my point of view, and I could be wrong here, I probably haven't done enough research to fully understand, but XRP is this transactional currency that's coming after the SWIFT banking system. So it's not necessarily, a cryptocurrency that you'd want to buy and hold like Bitcoin or Ethereum.
Ask yourself, is this sudden Fed caution really about inflation alone? Or is it designed to prime markets for the next digital finance era? When Trump's deal-making shifts global payment rails, who benefits most? And if the SEC under Biden quietly relaxes its stance on decentralized exchanges, what does that mean for the broader altcoin universe? Ripple insiders have long whispered that the company holds reserved liquidity to support market stability during high volatility windows, another layer of hidden support few are dissecting. So as we edge toward mid-June, every tweet, every policy nudge, and every whale accumulation tells a deeper story. It's not just about Biden or Trump or Ripple in isolation. It's about how their moves converge to set the stage for the next wave in crypto. And while headlines celebrate Bitcoin reclaiming six figures, the real game is unfolding beneath that surface, in a quiet boardroom in San Francisco, in the Fed's conference room in DC, and in Trump's Oval Office announcement.
I really wanted to talk to you about what the Fed finds itself in. And it plays off of what you just heard from the President and the Treasury Secretary today, that there are no talks as it relates to the most important counterparty in this trade war, that being China. At the same time, you heard Mike Arrighetti of Ares with Faber this morning that the economy's good. Sure, no one's really hiring that much, and no one's really doing that much in terms of big, capital deployment because there's this paralysis to some degree. So the Fed is watching all of it and comes away with what?
It's a pickle. It's a dilemma. Find your right word there, Scott. I mean, I guess I would argue a little bit with Michael Arrighetti. Hard to argue that the economy is good if nobody is investing or doing CapEx and if they're not hiring. That is not my idea of an ideal economy. I saw a report today from Reuters that M&A is about the worst it's been, had the worst month since 2009. That's also not a good.
Let's dig even deeper into what's really happening behind the scenes. First, consider the Fed's messaging. By publicly committing to a June 17th rate decision, the Fed under Biden sends a clear signal. We're not done steering markets. Investors interpret that as a green light to position ahead of time. You saw it today when Bitcoin leapt back above $80,000, and altcoins showed pockets of life. But the real beneficiaries of that pre-positioning aren't retail traders trying to time the market. They're the big holders with the resources to buy quietly and in volume. The same whales who've been stacking XRP aren't just betting on a generic rally. They're banking on a targeted policy shift that favors blockchain-based payments. Now, layer on Trump's trade theatrics. Announcing a major deal with a respected partner may sound like political theater, and in many ways it is. But it also functions as a catalyst. Every time Trump tweets about trade, currency markets wobble. The Canadian dollar strengthened today on speculation that Japan or Canada might be the partner in question, and that ripple of confidence spread through the broader financial ecosystem. Here's the twist. Blockchain firms like Ripple have been courting national banks for years to replace legacy transfer systems. When a trade deal touches cross-border commerce, it inevitably intersects with those discussions. If Canada or another partner leans into digital settlement tools, RippleNet suddenly goes from a niche solution to a strategic infrastructure.
Now, I think the real headline, though, is halfway across the world, because according to a recent report from NASDAQ, 80% of Japanese banks are set to embrace XRP for global payments by this year in 2025. And Japan is one of the most technologically advanced and crypto-friendly countries in the world. And if this adoption happens, it's a huge signal for XRP's utility. Now, why this is such a big deal, though, is because Japan's banking system is huge. And if XRP becomes the go-to bridge currency for cross-border payments, it could see huge demands from the legacy banks. So this is not just speculation, this is actually a real step toward real-world adoption. So that's one major reason why I think the price has a lot of potential.
Meanwhile, look at the data on XRP flows. On-chain analytics firms report that over 900 million XRP moved into large wallets this past month, a staggering figure given that XRP's circulating supply is just 55 billion. It's not casual accumulation, it's a systematic buildup. By comparison, Bitcoin's biggest whales added only a few thousand BTC over the same period. Why the disparity? XRP's faster transaction speeds and lower fees make it uniquely suited for on-demand liquidity. If global trade corridors start experimenting with real-time settlements, XRP will be the obvious choice, far more efficient than waiting days for swift transfers to clear. But there's another layer few discuss: regulatory arbitrage. Under Biden, the SEC initially took a hard line on Ripple, claiming XRP was an unregistered security. That legal battle cast a shadow over XRP's potential. Yet whispers of a negotiated settlement have circulated in legal circles, one that could redefine the regulatory framework for digital assets. If the SEC quietly agrees to classify XRP as a utility token, it sets a precedent for other altcoins. And if that settlement coincides with Trump's influence over crypto-friendly legislation, remember, he signed the resolution ending the DeFi broker rule. It creates a rare bipartisan path forward. You end up with a policy environment that's simultaneously tough on big banks, yet permissive toward blockchain innovation. The perfect storm for XRP's breakout.
The circulating supply is a measurement of the supply of a cryptocurrency that's in the general circulation. Given that coins are lost or burned, it's a hard number to actually establish. Circulating supply will function as a proportion of total supply.
Pause for a second and think about timing. The Fed holds off on rate cuts until mid-June. Trump's trade announcement lands in late May or early June. The legal settlement buzz around Ripple, if real, could surface any day. That cluster of events isn't random. It's compressed into a window of just weeks. And when markets detect compressed catalysts, they front-run them aggressively. Institutions don't wait for the Fed's statement. They buy days in advance. They don't wait for trade details. They buy on leaks. And they sure don't wait for a court filing. They position on credible rumors. That's why XRP whales have been so busy. We've already seen how Bitcoin dominance influences alts. As long as BTC is the marquee show, altcoins struggle for attention and capital. But imagine a scenario where XRP, buoyed by policy wins and trade linkages, breaks out independently. News outlets pick up the SEC settlement. Analysts highlight Canada's blockchain pilots, and tech blogs circle those whales' transactions. Suddenly, XRP's narrative decouples from Bitcoin. That could spur a self-reinforcing cycle. Headlines drive retail interest drives exchange listings drive liquidity, and liquidity drives price. And by the time Bitcoin retests $110K, XRP could be riding a wave of its own, trading at multiples of today's levels.
And Donald Trump, not for the first time, injected a shot of life into cryptocurrencies over the weekend. It started not long after his inauguration with this.
Yeah, this is the crypto EO. We're going to be forming an internal working group to make America the world capital on crypto under your leadership.
Which is really going up, right?
Absolutely.
They didn't go up. Crypto prices sank from that point on. Bitcoin slumped almost 20%. Trump's Trump coin was down almost 70%. Then Friday night US time, Trump went to his social media platform Truth Social to say he's creating a US crypto reserve that includes Ripple, Solana and Cardano. I will make sure the US is the crypto capital of the world, he wrote. No surprise, all those cryptos immediately went through the roof, safe in the knowledge the US government is about to start buying. Let's have a look here. You can see Ripple was up by 24%, Solana up by almost 18%. Then Trump returned to social media and said Bitcoin and Ethereum will also be at the heart of this reserve. I love Bitcoin and Ethereum, he wrote. So their prices, as a result, you can see up 10% each since that point.
So here's where you come in. Will you watch from the sidelines as Biden's Fed and Trump's trade deals reshape the crypto landscape, while XRP whales quietly load up? Or will you dive deeper and connect the dots? Subscribe and join the conversation, because when the next chapter unfolds, you don't want to be the last to know.